Welcome back, radio entrepreneurs, listeners, and fans. I'm producer Jillian King, and I'm excited to introduce you all to the Spring 2026 FBA Family Business Panel Discussion, Perspectives on What Family Businesses Need Today to Survive. In this panel, we will be exploring what family businesses need to thrive today and how to prepare for tomorrow. Today, we have two returning panelists you should know well. Stephen Wilchins, founding partner at Wilchins, Cosentino and Novins, and Richard Hirschen, partner at Gray Gray and Gray. Welcome. Glad you all can be with us today. Next, I'm excited to introduce our guest panelist, Stewart Karger, administrator of Belmont Manor. Belmont Manor is a family-owned nursing and rehabilitation center providing care for nearly 60 years. Welcome, Stewart. Finally, I would like to introduce the panel's moderator, Radio Entrepreneur's founder and CEO of Mage LLC, Jeffrey Davis. Welcome, Jeffrey. I will now hand the conversation over to you.
Thank you, Jillian. I appreciate the introduction, and welcome, Stewart. Very excited to have you on the panel. You're running a very interesting family business. I know we want to share our points. Welcome back, Rich. Hope you're doing well. Hello, Stephen, our regular panelist. You know, Stewart, you've been in business 47 years. It's a long time to be in business. Just the longevity alone is a sign of success. Can you start off for our listeners and just tell us a little what you do, what the business does, and how it got started by your father? Maybe a little background also about your entering the business so that they have that background perspective.
So going back, Belmont Manor opened in November 1967 as a skilled nursing facility in Belmont, Massachusetts, the only one that was here at that time. Prior to that, my father had been a contractor, and he met some guys around that were building nursing homes. And back in the late 50s and early 60s, nursing homes were basically old houses with a wing on it here and there. And he did a lot of that for other people. And he said, gee, not such a bad business. So he bought an 8-bed nursing home and put a 40-bed wing on one side and a 40 on another. And he bought another and another. And he was running at one point 3 different facilities at the same time in all different parts of the state. Actually, one was in Rhode Island, one was in Newburyport, and one was in Brockton. And at that point, he set his sights on to build what would have been in 1965 when he started this, a state-of-the-art facility that would be a brand new building, wide corridors that would meet all of the requirements of the life safety code, sprinkler, concrete brick building. So he looked for a town that didn't have a nursing home. He looked for land and endeavored on build Belmont Manor, and we opened in November of 1967. And shortly after that, he had already sold the one in Rhode Island. He was running Belmont, Brockton, and Newburyport at the same time. And when I graduated college, exactly 1 month to the day. And so that was, 47 years ago. I worked under him for about 5.5, 6 years. He totally retired in May of 85. And he taught me that a family business is like your baby, and you treat it that way. And business comes first, and you treat people well. And it's about the care we're giving, and the focus is on the residents. And he was very pragmatic. He was older, so he was when I was born. So he was a man that grew up through the Depression and kind of was given a family business that he didn't like and closed it and went out on his own. So I learned a lot from him, saying that there's nothing that he wouldn't do. So there's nothing that I won't do, as long as I'm qualified to do it. And that means sweeping a floor or, climbing on a ladder to change a light bulb, as well as, hiring and firing and making executive decisions. And that's my motto. There's nothing in this building that I won't do.
Sure. Was there any other family members working in the business with you?
My older sister, Susan, who went to school and became a social worker, was working at the beginning as an activity assistant. and then she became the social worker, and then she morphed into the admission coordinator, and she retired about 2 years ago.
Do you have any children involved in the business, Stewart?
I have three children. My oldest, my daughter, works here part-time, about 3 days a week, 3 half days a week, and she helps out in the mission department, helping the mission coordinate with some of the documentation and some of the busy work, and so when he can spend more time on the admissions and the tours and that. Two other children, one's an attorney that's no longer an attorney. He's in the watch business, and I have a younger one that's local, that's in the dog business.
So, Stewart, I'm going to ask you kind of an open-ended question. You're sort of going through three transitions. There was your father's business, then it was you taking it over with your sister, and then your sister leaving the business. That's a third. And now you're getting a little bit older, and I'm sure you're thinking about the business again in terms of the fourth generation of change. You know, it's also juxtaposed to a lot of changes in the world over 47 years. Do you have any insights in terms of, how, you've been successful through your transitions? Any insights about how you've dealt with them or how others could potentially look at these things during these times?
Well, I always looked at, because in this industry, clearly from 1979, of what we did for our residents to 2026 is completely different. We're much more sophisticated in the care that we give. We are much higher level of care. So you have to adopt with that. You go back to 19 in the 70s and 80s, a lot of the people that we had at residents were more like the folks that live in assisted living now. They needed help getting dressed, they need the bathing, they need the meals. But now we do all kinds of really more intense type of medical management. So it was always about, what was on the horizon and how do we stay focused and how do we increase the services. And that was, and one thing that we don't have, or single facilities or family facilities don't have, we don't have the luxury of have the corporate structure behind us telling us what to do and educating us and putting people in and policies in places. So we early on learned that we had to create our own policies and create our own way of doing things and determine what we need and who we want to admit and what kind of people there are and what type of staffing we need to hire. So we've had to adapt. So I used to say to my staff that we were a train on the track going down in a pretty good clip, not too fast and not too slow. But if you didn't want to keep up with the changes, you're going to fall off. So if you want to keep up with the changes, you're going to have to stay on the train. And that was something that some staff members of mine still use that phrase. I haven't said that in a long, long time, but some of the staff members still use that.
Anybody have a follow-up question before I go to my next one? I don't want to monopolize, or I can go.
I have a follow-up myself to that.
Oh,
Good.
The other thing I found is that in this business, building the loyalty not only to your clients, but to your staff. And we have staff that are here that have been with us for decades. 10, 20, 30. We even have some people that have been here 40 years. And I always said that people generally don't leave to go down to the competitor around the corner for 5 more cents or $10 more or whatever. People leave because they retire, or people leave because they move away or something like that. So generally, especially in the management staff, there's a lot of longevity. And I look at it, and that's really positive. And sometimes it can be really difficult to manage at the same time. People that have been with you so long.
So I'll go to the question.
Wait,
You know,
on
yes?
reflection, excuse me, Jeff. On reflection, looking back, are you pleased with what has happened over the years? Or what would you do, or what would you have changed?
I don't think I would have changed anything. I think that one regret that I may have is when my middle son, who's the attorney, wanted to come to work for me. And this was before COVID, or wanted to think about it. I felt that this was a very labor-intensive 24/7 business and very stressful. And I thought I was protecting him from a business like this, and I didn't want him to come to work here solely for a financial reason, and not necessarily was this something he really wanted. And then the second half of that is that at that point he was a corporate attorney in New York, working, in a big tower, you know, doing a lot of billable hours. And I felt that this type of work could be below him, where he was at such a high corporate level. And we've had a lot of discussions since then. And he has explained to me that it wasn't so great. And you look on the outside because maybe you never worked in a corporation like that, with that grueling type of especially in law and working till midnight and working on weekends. So what I looked at as being very glamorous, he looked at being very treacherous. And he said that, maybe if he had come to work here, working hard, it could have been a lot better for me to groom somebody. But now he has his own life and married, and I miss that boat. So I do think about that a lot.
So by protecting him, do you feel that that was a bad thing to do?
I think that I should have given him the opportunity to come into the business, or to look into the business with me to see if it's something he wanted to do. I think, and I also felt by the time we really talked about it, I was 21 years old when I came to work for my dad, turning 22. I really felt that, 30 and up was a different realm in his life, a different stage. I came in, and did a lot of grunt work with my dad, and I felt that maybe with his education and his experience and being the corporate attorney for 10 years, maybe that wouldn't be what he would do. So it's obviously hindsight, it's looking back. And I will tell you that during COVID, he came from New York and lived with us for 3 months and worked remotely. And he saw what I was going through. And he said to me one day, he said to me, "Dad, I'll quit my job and I'll come work for you. You don't have to pay me. I'll come work for you and just help you out." And I looked at him, I sat across from the kitchen table, and I looked at him, and I said, "I don't want you to have the stress of this. I wouldn't want anyone to have this stress." So I think about that. But on the other hand, he just said to me recently, last week, "Dad, I'd be willing to come to Boston every so often and sit in 3 days a week. I'll work remote, just to see what you do, just to see what it's like." And I think that may be a good thing. That may be a good thing in the future. Something would happen to me. That may be something that maybe he and his wife would decide that they wanted to make a move here at some point. I really don't think that's going to happen. But I think that the positive would be somebody in the family understanding the business. Because right now, no one really understands it. Because when my sister was in the business, she was in her own silo of just what she did.
How important is it to you to keep it in the family for the next generation, right? So your father started it, you took it over. Do you want to pass it down? Is that important to you?
Yes and no. It's a very loaded question. So the first time I met Steve, one of the first things they said to me, "What's your succession plan?" And I said to him, "Well, I really don't have one, but I guess it's either my son comes to work for me or we sell." He said, "Oh, those are the only two options?" I said, "I think so." He said, "There are a lot of other options." And he opened my eyes to potential other options: a lease, a management company, bringing somebody in to take over my position. So we talked about that. I think, to be honest with you, I get back into who my father was at the core. And I think what the opportunity would arise, if the opportunity were a sale and it was financially right for my family, that would be potentially the right thing to do. But then maybe to keep it and bring in a team to run it so I can step back a little bit. that could be more financially advantageous. I will tell you that the Belmont Manor and the Karger have been synonymous in the name. I've been on airplanes, I've been away and talking to people that draws back to, oh, I knew someone that was there. Oh, you run a nursing home in Belmont? Oh, I had a person that was at a nursing home in Belmont. Oh, it had to be mine because we're the only one. And that has happened a lot. And so, there is this attachment, but I also believe at the right time, if it's right to walk away, you walk away and don't turn back and look at the next part of my life.
But Stuart, why is it that with family members, they have to be all in or
Say
not?
that again?
Why do they have to be all in? I mean, many family members in businesses play different roles. And so let's take your son, which you just mentioned.
Trustees, board of directors, right?
Right. It's a perfect opportunity to have your son engaged on a periodic basis. It doesn't have to be every month, but it could be quarterly. And it also would allow you to see how your daughter and your son work together as well. So it doesn't mean that because my child isn't full time that we can't keep the business. Many families retain it and have other people running it. So
I guess to answer that question, on a board is one thing, but my position here is so labor intensive, and I'm so involved in so many of the nuances of the operation. You can't do that remote. You can't do that part-time, or you can't do that, quarterly. And this is a kind of a conversation that my wife and I have had over the years of her wanting me to spend, more time away or more time in Florida. And I have other friends, husbands that work remotely. I can do a lot of things remotely, but it's not my, there's something to be said of me sitting here on the first floor in my office, whether I'm playing a game, engaging in business, doing something personal, I'm here. So I think what I'm hearing from you is that having my son engage and understanding more about the business, if someone else were running it or a management company, being in tune for the family if I weren't here. I think that's what I'm hearing.
yeah, that's an important role for family members if they're not involved. I'm not saying he can't be involved full time, but to put his toe in the water, to get a better understanding of how his dad really operates and how the Belmont Manor operates, why not explore it?
Well, I think this is a very interesting discussion that, as all of us know, that most families are looking at, how we look at our family businesses transitioning 10 years ago, 20 years ago is very different than how we have to look at it today due to growth, profitability, and that maybe there are gray answers, not black and white answers. And I think that's what you're getting into, Stephen. And interesting how the time flies. We're finished our first segment. We're going to delve in a little bit deeper with Stewart, and thank you so far, Stewart, and to the panel. We invite Jillian King, our producer, back on. Welcome back, Jillian.
Thank you, Jeffrey. That wraps up part one of this spring 2026 edition of the FBA Family Business Panel discussion. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers who have tuned in for this first segment on Radio Entrepreneurs. Be sure to check out parts 2 and 3 of this discussion to hear more and click subscribe just below the video, or follow if you're listening on one of our podcast platforms to stay up to date on all of our postings as they go live. If you're a fan of our videos, please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and press the bell button. It helps immensely. Radio Entrepreneurs is also active on LinkedIn, so be sure to follow our page there for more business advice and discussions. Until next time, Goodbye and thanks for listening. We'll be back with more stories on Radio Entrepreneurs.